Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Jamf After Dark podcast, a podcast to introduce you to the people at Jamf, learn about what we're up to when it comes to managing and securing Apple devices, along with what's happening in the IT landscape. I'm your co host, Kat Garbus, joined by my fellow co host, and also known as my partner in Jamf crime, Sean Rabbit.
Hi, Kat. They let me back again. So here I am to put the professional back in podcast. So welcome. Welcome, listeners.
Glad to have you back. Love having you as my co host. It's a really nice excuse to work together. Today, we are joined by the amazing people that support healthcare at Jamf. We have Kari Chase, Adam Mahmud, Breean Moreno, and Tim Knox, which I basically will just rename you all to the healthcare dream team.
You know, and healthcare team, since we have all of our 7 listeners listening right now, and they can't see you because podcast is the greatest form of audio there. Why don't you introduce yourselves and your voice to the loving audience out there, and tell us what you know about healthcare.
Hello, Kat and Sean. Thank you for having me. I am Kari Chase, Director of Product Strategy and Industry, and I have the pleasure of working with the business development team and sales group and all of these lovely people that you're going to meet, not to mention the product area as well, to drive industry workflows in iOS, iPadOS, and tvOS.
Hello, everyone. Kat, Sean, nice to see you. This is Adam Mahmud, dialed in here. I head up product marketing for healthcare at Jamf. It's a pleasure to be back on the podcast, and certainly quite a lot has changed, which we'll get into today. So I'll hand it over to Tim Knox.
Hi, I'm Tim Knox. I am the Senior Consulting Engineer at Jamf that is focused on all of our industry solutions, but I started my time at Jamf almost 8 years ago in the healthcare organization. So I've been talking healthcare for an awfully long time, and basically my job is to be the nerd in the room to talk about all of our technical nerdery that is healthcare related.
And hello, everyone. I am Breean Moreno, the Solution Partner Manager focused on healthcare here at Jamf. My goal is to make your lives easier. So all 7+ of you that are listening today, if I haven't worked with you, I hope to work with you soon. We are looking to find all of the partners out there that make health systems function and make sure that we're integrating with you. So all of our healthcare partners and accounts have an easier time deploying with Jamf.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. And thank you to our listeners for being here as well. Sean said all 7 of you. I know there's more than that, but we're just going to run with that today. And Adam, it's actually really good to have you back because we actually haven't had a healthcare podcast since 2020. So that's been a bit too long, almost 3 years since we've had you on here. And now there's a whole army of people supporting healthcare here at Jamf. What's new from Jamf in regards to healthcare? How are we helping customers?
Thanks for the question, Kat. And, it's funny, too, because, in fact, if my numbers are accurate, there are more than 7 people on that army now, too, which is quite amazing to see. No, in all seriousness, I think that's probably the most important. Although there are a few of us here today, there are really there's a large number of individuals that focus on this healthcare vertical across Jamf globally. And that includes the groups that Kari and others mentioned earlier on the call. So to see such a dedicated effort, continued effort on this key vertical and other industries, as you heard about today, really, really key areas of continued focus for Jamf. I think a couple other things that come to mind, and others can pop in here. We certainly have not lost our focus around certain specific healthcare use cases of Apple technology. There are themes that we, Apple, and our partners have been speaking to and building solutions around for years, and that those focus areas have not gone away. I think Tim and others will get into those a bit later. But also beyond that, Jamf has evolved quite a bit at the corporate level. And yes, we have decades of history being a leader in the Mac management space, right? And of course, we in our healthcare space have shown a lot of effort in mobility management as well over the past 5, 6, 7 years. But now there's a whole nother ballgame around security and a whole evolved landscape that needs new solutions to meet new threats. And Jamf is at the ready to support healthcare and beyond. I'm not sure if anyone else on the team has kind of thoughts around those or others.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So, a few of the things that have continued to expand over here at Jamf in our healthcare atmosphere is really aligned with those partners. And who are we integrating with, and how are we working together to streamline workflow, improve clinical communications, increase education and adoption of Apple devices? And if you haven't seen some of the new partners that we're working with, I highly encourage you to check out our marketplace, marketplace.jamf.com. Shameless little plug in there. But if there's someone that you need us to integrate with, we're here to help you. Our team is highly equipped to find those partners and bring them on board and make sure that we are helping adhere to what your use case is and make you successful. So check it out. Let us know if you have questions and thoughts. I'm eager to work with all of you.
Sounds good. So I appreciate it. So it sounds like we have started to build on top of what we've already had as far as solutions and resources go. And I know we'll dive into those in just a little bit. And it also sounds like we've really started to have more of a thought around security as well in the healthcare space. I think initially it was around how do we streamline workflows, as you mentioned, Adam, and now it's more how do we not only have security front of mind, but also to what Breean had said, how do we also integrate with other solutions out there? As we know, we're just a piece of that IT stack in a highly regulated industry. So thanks for kind of setting the table there. Sean, any follow-up questions that you wanted to ask our group?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to ask a dumb question, and it's gonna sound like its own answer. Like what type of group is actually using Jamf in the healthcare space there? And you're going to say like, oh, it's healthcare organizations, obviously, but that means so much now. Like you got. I'm like, my better half used to work for an LIS company, so the people that know what healthcare is going to know what LIS is. That's fun, but nobody else outside the world who's actually using this stuff.
So I'll step up and talk about the acute cares and clinics are probably the biggest place that you're going to see some of our workflows in. But we also have senior living and aging care spaces, pharma and healthcare payers, and insurance providers. So there's a number of areas that collaborate together to make up healthcare. It also makes me kind of think of, I get to see a lot of this in our community space. We have a space there called Healthcare Heroes. And that's where we have our customers come into that space where they can collaborate and talk. And it's been a really cool experience because I've seen device manufacturers come in and say, hey, we're using Jamf Pro to do iPads in the care clinics. I need someone to test. And a couple of hospitals or clinics have popped up saying, hey, we use your stuff, happy to help you. And so it's really kind of this beautiful ecosystem that's come to be.
I mean, you're looking at it, it's like it's not just like you're walking into a hospital and it's enormous, so therefore they have 10,000 devices, they must be using Jamf. So you're talking like doctors' offices and small hospices and things like that using these solutions too at the same time then.
Exactly. Yes.
I think, Kari, I think back to some of our conversations internally when we were even defining some of this, of where our focuses are. And in some ways, you can kind of group it all together of any organization that's involved with the delivery of care, or kind of components of the care delivery systems, right? So I think those are great highlights, Kari. It's not just hospitals. And of course, we have a lot of unique functionality for hospitals. And to the point I made earlier, our focus isn't changing there. But yes, there's many other orgs that are also in the Jamf family. There's a couple just briefly that are worth highlighting. There's a story that was told at our user conference JNUC last year from an organization in the Netherlands. And UMC Utrecht is the name of the hospital. They've been a Jamf customer for like 10 years with kind of a small population of Mac in particular that were used by researchers and other individuals across the academic medical center. But everything changed in 2020. Like many health systems, they were faced with the pandemic, how to navigate the waters of remote employees connecting to corporate systems. And obviously, in this case, the stakes are a little higher because those corporate systems are healthcare systems with patient data, et cetera. The CIO and team had kind of opened up the concept of device choice across the org. So individuals who were now connecting from home had the ability to choose, did they want a Mac or a PC? And all of a sudden, that population of once 400 Macs became 2,500 Macs, 3,000 Macs. So that hospital in particular told the story of how all of Jamf's technologies, Jamf Pro, Protect, and Connect, kind of come together to enable this modern remote access for, again, any use case, whether that's care delivery focused, like a provider providing telehealth sessions, or someone like an academic researcher. So again, really interesting themes of not only who's using us, but for why. It's all Apple use cases wherever they may exist across the world of health.
And since we never want to say anybody's name, since we are talking about the Netherlands, just a shout out to Mr. H. You know who you are, and I know that you'll hit me up on Mac admins later. So
I love it. Well, thank you for kind of bringing us up to speed. So I think in summary from what I'm hearing for our listeners, we've worked with large hospitals, but it's not just them. And we're not even just in a mirror anymore. We're global and we're working with senior living centers. We're working with pharma. So we've really found different ways to connect and support Apple technology in the healthcare space. And I want to touch on this a bit because it's no surprise to anyone listening to this podcast right now that healthcare is a highly regulated industry. There's a lot of baselines and requirements. And furthermore, Adam, you struck a nerve earlier when you started talking about security. It's a highly targeted industry in addition to being highly regulated. The HIPAA Journal wrote that between 2009 and 2022, 5,150 healthcare data breaches of 500 or more records were reported to the HHS Office for Civil Rights. To further set that stage, according to IBM's security annual cost of a data breach report, the average price tag of a breach is $10 million and up 9%, according to Fierce Healthcare that took time to analyze that data. All this to say, how are we helping customers with security in the healthcare space with their Apple technology?
You're right, Kat. Breaches are on the rise in healthcare and all industries. And there are a number of healthcare organizations that have actually had to go back to paper and pencil as a result of a breach. And the cost and impact is enormous, not only to the patients, but also to the organization. And it's interesting the types of data that attract this type of breach are not only patient health information, but proprietary business information and personal information. And most often, the entrance is through an endpoint by a compromised app, website, or message. For example, a frontline worker may be using a device to capture patient data in the electronic health record system, and that device may not be managed or restricted to the tools or apps needed to perform their role. And when all of a sudden a pop up notice happens, either from the email or the app being used, the user may click on it just out of distraction. And that's all it takes. So, this is where Jamf has the great opportunity to help. We know that Apple builds one of the most secure platforms on the market, but hackers, they love a challenge. And using Jamf Pro to manage, set up and reset to provision that device, and Jamf Protect to secure it, the distractions are reduced and that endpoint is secured, allowing that frontline worker to focus on the care, not the device.
I think it's a holistic approach, is what it sounds like, that we're taking from that zero touch enrollment, right? When we have that device provisioned, they have to authenticate who they are before they can even get to a main screen. And of course, with Jamf Protect, having that ability to protect against phishing or malware or links, right? It sounds like from what you described, someone could innocently just be doing their job. And they're not in tech, they're in healthcare. They don't know exactly what they're clicking on. They might think it's a new update. They might think it's something helpful from their job. So it sounds like we're starting to really expand with Jamf Protect and having ways to have defenses against those types of threats when it comes to links and maybe unbeknownst threats out there that are just coming through one way or another.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's actually still the same, but when uh, my better half was working for that LIS company there, I think that the cost of a single incident for patient identification getting out into the wild was $10,000 fine uh, per per patient. So that's a chunk of change right there. Like what is Jamf doing to support management security to really prevent that costly compromise? Because one patient is 10 grand. A whole bunch of patients is a whole lot of money.
You're right. It can certainly be costly. And Kat had referenced some of those other studies of if a breach occurs, the overall costs that an org can be on the hook for. So you're right. The stakes are real. And Kari certainly summarized a number of the kind of places where we can tap into Apple security native functionality, but go deeper for the needs of the modern enterprise. There's a couple things that came up, Kat, that you mentioned around phishing or smishing, right? Text messages with malicious action. Well, the threat landscape has changed now, right? And we all know this is driven by things like the pandemic pushing remote work, but there are devices that are being used for work purposes that might not be owned or managed by organizations. BYOD devices, right? They present a whole separate modern threat vector that we might not have the traditional building blocks for security, i.e. configurations of corporate-owned assets, but yet now that device is still reaching in this world, healthcare, a clinical system. So it's the challenges in securing modern healthcare are really all around this kind of broad adoption of hybrid work and cloud and everything that comes together, but with the heightened risks you're talking about of the type of data, why it's sought after, and the cost associated to it. I think a couple things that come to mind of Jamf's platform, like apart from the product names, what we're attempting to do is broker together an experience for users that's simple and easy. It's Apple first technology that's consumer simple. Yet in the background is something that not only is managed properly, but secured in a way that an organization can trust this device, this asset, this user. So it's a harmony of our building blocks of management technologies together with our extended functionality around identity and access controls, and of course, endpoint and network security. And when you thread all of these things together, whether we're dealing with BYOD iPhones for doctors, or a corporate-owned Mac that's deployed to a clinician for telehealth that they're delivering from home, or anything else, there are those commonalities of where we need to secure endpoints and leverage identity-based workflows to gate access to apps, systems, and resources. And those are the things that we can help thread together across different Apple deployment scenarios and Apple operating systems, really. Sean, you're the expert in those technologies. So, I mean, maybe there's some color you might want to add in here for our listeners, since I'm up in the clouds and how I'm answering.
I mean, I was just going to shout out there that I'm probably the only person in my family who's not actually in healthcare. So, like, my uncle's a doctor, my mother was an emergency room nurse for 30 years. That being said, just for simplicity at the end of the day, my mom, it's actually a true story. She taught my doctor uncle how to actually run a line for uh, even though he's a doctor, he had never put in a needle into someone's arm before there. So she had to teach him, which of course upset him tremendously. That the doctor's learning from the nurse, but what I'm talking about here is that, like, she knows how to do that. She could probably look at you and tell you exactly what wrong thing you ate in order to get that stomach ache. But you try to get her to figure out something to do with a piece of technology, and it's just going to be abandon all hope, all you enter here. So, these our IT folks that are listening out here that are trying to make life as simple as possible for our end users. it's like you're talking to a group of people that are very intelligent and very smart, and suddenly you're throwing something new and unusual in front of them, and they don't get it. But then you throw an iPhone in front of them, and they understand because, well, they got that in their pocket already. So using it at work, being able to secure it, it's great, you know. Tim, you haven't heard much from you at all. So
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. One of the things that when I'm talking to customers about how we can help their devices and help their nursing staff and help their patients and just improve everything, one of the most important things is if we're asking nurses to do anything other than direct patient care, we've already failed in our mission. We want to make sure that whatever it is they're doing, it is as transparent as possible. There's no friction between the thing they have in their hand and the person they want to help. And that's really what we're trying to do with this stuff.
Tim, I want to follow up with you because you're talking to fellow admins, sometimes security admins, and I wanted to touch on it. How are you helping, or how is Jamf helping organizations around compliance? That's a question I hear a lot. I feel like that's something you've had probably firsthand experience in helping organizations that you're connecting with daily. And since you're the technical guru on this call representing healthcare, it's such a regulated industry. So I'm curious how, in your experience or what you're seeing in the field, how we're helping both from a compliance need and security.
Yeah, and definitely the thing that I have found myself needing to say on calls frequently, which makes salespeople's hearts drop to their stomach, is that Jamf is not HIPAA compliant. And that is true because we're not using anything with patient data. We don't actually have to be HIPAA compliant. We help deploy apps that are HIPAA compliant. We help deploy, web browsers that might have some HIPAA compliance within them, and we help your devices maintain that compliance. But Jamf itself doesn't collect any patient information, so like we don't need to try to enter into that territory, other than just making sure that the devices the nurses have are nice and secure and locked and protected and doesn't have anything on them that is extra or confusing or any of that stuff that would need, plus along with all of our new security software. And we've all sorts of cool tools about building in some compliance benchmarks from CIS and some neat new things with our compliance checkers that we're using to help check all of your compliance with these devices.
You had mentioned CIS benchmarks and some cool, neat tools. Can anyone expand a little bit more for our listeners what some of those cool, neat tools might be?
I'll attempt to hop in, and I might have to popcorn over to Sean or something here too. But so to Tim's point, we ourselves not being HIPAA compliant, absolutely our products can help customers achieve risk mitigation associated with HIPAA, right? If they use our tools the right way, they can achieve their business outcomes to mitigate those risks. So the things like benchmarking against CIS standards is big, right? That's not a magic bullet. It's not a one check box for compliance. Yet it certainly goes a long way. And I think it's something any healthcare organization should review. Beyond that, the way that Jamf's security products can gain deeper insight, let's say to the Mac fleet, comes certainly into foray as we see more Mac usage. So being able to, actually monitor some of these Apple native security technologies like Gatekeeper and XProtect and report on them in mass. It's one thing to have that security feature on your operating system at home, right, and have a great consumer macOS experience. It's another to be a modern enterprise and understand the fleet health as to how those security tools are being implemented across the Macs. Those are things that we can support. I think another huge thing around compliance is data streaming. So telemetry of the health of these macOS endpoints or other endpoints, frankly, streaming into a security incident event management system or into Jamf's security cloud. Those are all ways to help gain insights, right? And as we gain more insights, orgs can understand where they sit against compliance standards.
And Tim, you and I both know a certain rocket scientist that kind of made a thing with some stuff that might be really helpful to a admin who's listening today, even if they're not using a Jamf product.
Yeah, that's precisely what I was thinking about. Our friend, ex-NASA rocket scientist. The compliance checker has all sorts of. Is that what we're calling it, Sean? Compliance checker?
It's Mac Compliance Security Project thingy. I don't what's it
Yeah,
officially. Yeah.
I like mine
The
better.
macOS Compliance Project?
That sounds right. I mean, it sounds better
That
than what I
that sounds
said,
right.
so we can
Yeah.
go with that.
I'm gonna go with that. Well, there's the
Great.
We
macOS
could just come up
Compliance
with names
Project.
right now. We got plenty of people here in marketing available, and they're obviously listening to this podcast. We can rename it right now.
Sure.
I say we name
Yeah.
it Bob. Oh, wait a minute.
I
There's
think.
already a Microsoft Bob. Never mind. Anyway, the Mac Security Compliance Project, Tim.
It is a way for you to look at the most current security compliance regulations and import the correct mobile config file or configuration profile directly into your Jamf Pro instance so that you can go, hey, I need to make sure that whatever it is we're doing that we can affect with HIPAA compliance, great. We're just going to say, I want to do that thing. And then the little compliance checker thingamabob goes, cool, we can do that thing. And then you import it into Jamf Pro and now you're doing that thing. Is that technical enough?
That's a pretty good technical answer. I'll go with it. I mean, for a podcast where at least that I'm hosting, I think it's perfectly technical. I like it. So
Can you tell us a bit, Tim's, because you've been very close to building our solutions. You've if I can so boldly boast for you, I mean, you're on our patents, right? For healthcare. Nodding, by the way, this is, I think, the theme. Nodding doesn't work on the podcast, FYI. So, but can you tell us a bit more about our healthcare patented solutions that I think in turn make us unique, but also have helped organizations that we're working with? Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. The patented solutions we have at Jamf, I think, show exactly how dedicated we are to this particular industry. One of the things that I like most about working in the industry space at Jamf is that we have such a large crew behind us to help hear what the customers are looking for and hear their problem statements and be empathetic and understand that it is a real thing. These are real people who are experiencing potentially real need, or in the case of healthcare, actual real crisis that we can help with these cool Apple devices that everybody wants to be able to use. It started with the healthcare listener way back when, and the healthcare listener, for the uninitiated, is the problem statement was, what if I wanted to give patients the ability to look at their own charts, keep up with the Mandalorian, uh, be able to affect maybe the shades and the temperature, order food, use this device as if it's their own, and simultaneously be able to even that technological playing field so that everybody who enters your hospital system has the same access to the same kinds of devices, because we can't assume that everybody walking into the hospital is going to have the most current iPad or an iPhone or something that they can use to have that. So how do we give that to everybody? The hospitals are in better shape because now everybody has access to the same information. They're getting a better experience for their patients and sometimes a better turnout of their patients, because distraction technology is a real thing. And then at the end of the patient's stay, when they get discharged, our little healthcare listener thing that started this whole industry hears that command from the nurse and wipes that device, clears all the patient information off that device. We don't ask the nurses to do anything that they wouldn't normally do. All they do is just discharge the patient like they would any other patient. They don't treat anybody any differently if they have an iPad in the room or not. It's just the same. And then anybody can use that device and use it and be able to delete the information afterwards automatically. It's really powerful and really simple, which is kind of the greatness from them.
Well, I was actually just thinking about that. It's like Brianna, with all of the things that Tim just talked about, I think there's about 17 different partner systems there that we probably just mentioned, from just the listening to the actual management system to changing the shades, making them open and close and ordering some food, that you work a lot with our partners. And can you tell us a little bit more what you do to work with them?
Yeah, absolutely, Sean, and it's very true. You no longer feel like you're in the 80s when you join some of these health systems and you go and now you've got an iPad and you can access your Netflix and your Hulu. And gosh, I don't want to use that old-fashioned pillow speaker that's dirty and I mean, Granted, they all do their best job to clean it, but they're always sticky and gross. So now we've got the ability to utilize an iPad for what it can be, a smart device. And so, as I mentioned, with the Jamf Partner Program, I work with different organizations that allow integration. Anything from how do we establish a connection together? How do we deploy and set up deployment guides to let's get in the weeds. Let's look at what API commands can tell my device to do XYZ. And I want this app at this time on this device, and only these handful of roles can access it. But also, don't update it in the middle of the day when our clinicians are busy helping our patients. Let's be able to postpone that iOS update or that Epic update or any of those. And so it's fun because I get to help answer and solve some of the problems that the health systems have brought for years on end. Do we want our clinicians to have to go and touch every device and log into every single application? Absolutely not. So as we build out technologies to streamline workflow, everyone's winning. And once we start to build these conversations and build these integrations, then we do the fun stuff, or I do the fun stuff, which is let's market it. Let's make sure that everyone knows. So health systems don't have to go searching and calling tech support and opening tickets because how in the heck does this work? We build blogs, we build webinars, we will make sure that you have deployment guides. And again, check out the marketplace because you can find a lot of that there already, but we'll continue to iterate on that for you.
I'll just chime in if I can. It's so exciting to see that work you're doing, Bree, because something some people listening may have heard from our CEO, Dean Hager, at conferences way back, at JNUC years ago, or others at Jamf talk about is the purpose of a device at the end of the day. And, Jamf isn't necessarily the reason or the purpose of an Apple device. We can help manage and secure it. But oftentimes it's these partner applications that Bree's referencing here. They're the purpose. They're the reason. So cool to see how you've integrated us with them to drive solutions for customers.
I also think of it all as a picture of patient care, and most focused should be the provider. The patient should be the most focused, and then the provider next to them. But the background, it's slightly blurred. Like in a Zoom video, when you're on a Zoom call and you blur it out, well, we're in the background. We're in that blur, but we're making everything happen and beautiful. And so it's the combination of Apple, Jamf, and the solution partners that come together that allow for that care provider to care for that patient and get them to where they can get their life back in order and enjoy it.
Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for these amazing updates on what's happening with healthcare and Jamf and our partnerships. I want to change gears a little. There's a major healthcare conference coming up, HIMSS, which, for those who aren't aware, stands for Healthcare Information and Management Systems Society. This conference is happening in my hometown, Chicago, next month. Who here is all going, and can we have a preview of what to expect at HIMSS this year and what Jamf will be offering attendees?
Oh yes, Kat, let me jump in because I'm beyond excited to get back to Chicago. I do hope the weather plays nice. I know it's temperamental, and I've been here in Austin very spoiled with 80 degrees lately, so put that shameless plug for Mother Nature to be nice.
It won't be. It snowed on my birthday. We've had blizzards on April, so we're just gonna kiss that little wish goodbye. But continue. Tell us more.
Well, we'll warm you up inside by coming by the Jamf booth. There's going to be most of us here. I'll be there. And in addition to learning about just what does Jamf do to help support the Apple platform, we're going to have a day in the life of a clinician. Being able to work alongside our Apple partners, we're going to have partners for each of the different use cases. So if you're not sure, gosh, we've gone back and forth if we're ready to adopt iPhones because our clinical communication strategy has still been a little hit or miss. We've got some BYOs sprinkled in there with our providers. You can come and talk to our team and learn about who are some of the partners, and then meet some of the partners in our booth to walk you through what are some of the integrations that they've built with our platform. How would it look and function in your world? And as we talk about that patient bedside experience, and we're looking at how do you make sure if you're investing in these iPads that they're utilized? It's great to put a platform out there, but if no one's using it, and then they're clogging up your network bandwidth with their own personal device, that's not fabulous. And we'll have partners who are going to be able to showcase what they're doing, how their apps work alongside all of the other apps that you would already have deployed in your system, and take you through that journey as we're looking at sending you home and what's happening in healthcare now, virtual wards, remote patient monitoring, and then taking you all the way through that entire journey of our providers prefer Mac and how is Mac working in the healthcare environment. So it's going to be a day in the life. It's going to be a great tour. We're going to have multiple partners, and I don't think I can choose one that's my favorite. For those who know me, you know I'm a redhead, and I don't have any redheaded stepchildren. I love them all, but we're going to be spotlighting some of the greatness of you can deploy ultrasounds way out in remote areas like our teammates at Butterfly does. We'll be talking through Butterfly. We'll have our Bungee team there who's talking about how are they equipping pediatric facilities and pediatric beds with iPads. And as we already talked about, distraction therapy and making sure that we have the opportunity to change that patient experience, make it more like a welcoming home environment, and make sure that we have the right team members to walk you through that journey. So I'm excited. I cannot wait for April 17th to see all of the team members from Jamf, plus all of the great team members that I've worked with over the last 25 years in healthcare. So come see us, booth 1774. We'll be there.
Amazing. So it sounds like we're going to have some ways to stage out what it's really like to use Jamf in healthcare and integrate with solution partners available. April 17th is the most amazing day ever. Not only because that's when, HIMSS is starting, but it's my birthday. That's so just throwing that out there. I expect
Pre-birthday
presents.
wishes.
um, but I wanted to before we all disconnect, I did want to bother you one more time, Tim, because I know you'll also be attending HIMSS, and you being, with the technical background, what kind of maybe demos can people expect from
Well,
you in
last
attending
year
our
we sent,
booth?
I don't know, something like 19 iPads and a couple of Macs and I think 6 Apple TVs to the booth. And I imagine it'll be something similar this time. And what we want to try to do is to show off all of those patents that we have that are healthcare specific. Virtual visits we'll be able to show off, which is a way for patients to be able to communicate from a bedside, either to a clinician or to a loved one outside the walls without needing a username and password. Set and reset is an old story. We've talked about that for a long time. To be able to provision a device from the device, it gets to decide what it wants to be based on the user input. And I'm sure we will be talking about single login, which is the new hotness. That is the ability to log in with your Azure credentials and be able to change the device's context based on that login, so that if you log in as a doctor, you're going to get doctor stuff. And if you're going to log in as a nurse, you're going to get nurse stuff. So all of those things will be on display along with our displays, which will show off how we can, signage in rooms and signage in hallways. And there's going to be a lot to look at.
So it sounds like people can try an iPad, see some of our patented solutions. So you had mentioned virtual visits as one of them, set up and reset, which is an app that we had developed. People can actually just try it out. I did want to also touch on the fact when it comes to any of our demos, anything that admins can take home with as far as like if they wanted to try this in their own environment, would they get to sample some of this at HIMSS and be able to reproduce this with you at a later time in a testing environment? Is that something folks can try if they're uncertain of will this work for us?
Boy, how cool would it be to be able to just have like a little bucket of code at the front of the booth where they can
Right.
just pick up a sample and take it home and upload it to their Jamf Pro instance. All of the things that we're going to talk about are things that they can put in place in their dev environment, except for virtual visits and the healthcare listener itself. Those are two things that require pro services engagements with in order to get functional. But single login we can help them get working with, setup and reset we can get them help working with. The connect stuff that I'm certain we'll have in the booth as well are things that they can try out and trial. If they don't have any Jamf Pro instance at all, we have a very simple way of being able to spin up a free trial that people can load up and start poking around and start working things out. And we will have an army of salespeople there that would be happy to talk to them about how they can get that set up.
The last thing I'll touch on, and then Adam, I'll pass it over to you. It sounded like you had something to add about HIMSS, but Tim, you touched on signing in with Azure credentials with Jamf, and that points to a Microsoft integration in healthcare. Sean and I have spoken about Azure Jamf Connect integrations. Can you just elaborate on that for those admins listening in on what this preview might sound like or look like if they were to come check that out?
Totes. Yeah. It is not a healthcare specific thing. I should say that right off the bat. It doesn't require you to be a healthcare customer and try this. If you're any customer and you want to try single login, that is a perfectly a possible thing to do, assuming you have an Azure instance for you to test within. It requires Azure and it requires Jamf. Those are the two pieces. Well, I guess it also requires an Apple device. You need an iPhone or you need an iPad. It won't play nice with Android. However, if you do have three of those things, you can get single login working today. It is a relatively straightforward thing to do if you've worked within Azure before, and if you've worked within Jamf before. Those two skill sets are not often overlapping. So you may need to get one or two people involved, an Azure person and a Jamf person, unless you were one of those lucky few like Sean Rabbit and myself who have used both Azure and Jamf professionally and personally.
And if we're going to stick with the Chicago theme, single login, it is so choice. If you have the means, I highly recommend picking it up.
Ooh, I love that. And if you're not ready to pick it up, come pick it up at HIMSS and try it, to Kat's question, and see how it feels. Hope you know what I was going to chime in with is Adam here for the listeners. Hopefully what you heard from Breean and from Tim kind of comes together. You see this marriage around the things Kari mentioned, the things in focus outside of the blur, i.e. the device and the main reason they're being used, partner applications, why they matter for things like patient experience, clinical communications, telehealth. And you also see the things that Tim spoke about, these unique patented workflows that we've built around those same use cases and how they integrate with our core products. In the past, that's been our management products, Jamf Pro, but absolutely you can expect to see how the security products, Jamf Connect and Jamf Protect, will be woven into those same Apple use cases around the things we just spoke about. I think the one other call out is that there's this whole other bucket, which is anything outside of that, we're here to help secure and manage, whether that's within hospitals or beyond, whether it's Mac or BYO, whatever the need is, Jamf has the right products to meet kind of the growing landscape, and they'll all be on display at HIMSS, to Tim's point. We got a lot of stuff to play with.
I love it. Adam, Bree, Kari, Eagle Award winning consulting engineer Tim Knox. Thank you for being with us here today at the podcast, and more importantly, thank you for being just a couple of the Jamfs that are working on this healthcare team here that are trying to actually affect patient outcomes and keep making the world a little bit of a better place. It's for those folks that are out there that are part of the IT teams of these organizations. You are doing the same thing. You are, whether you think about it every day or just every once in a while realize that you are slowly and hopefully surely proceeding forward and making the world a slightly better place. So appreciate you being here for this and sharing all the updates and changes and our little preview of HIMSS.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. And thank you to listeners for joining this episode. If any of you would like to meet with any of our Jamfs at HIMSS and you'd like to set that up in advance, either reach out to your Jamf account executive, or if you don't have one, and maybe you're like, I'm hearing about Jamf for the first time, and this podcast was on the internet, and someone did a hashtag, and this whole thing blew my mind, and we want to hear about telecommunications and virtual visits and all of these other things that are patented that we likely cannot get elsewhere. Email us info@jamf.com, and we would love to set you up and make sure that we can help. We also have a link, jamf.it/HIMSS, and that's HIMSS.
I love it. Well, Kat, we successfully got another podcast under our belt, and HR still hasn't fired me, so I would consider that a great success.
I'm still here too. Does HR even know? Maybe that's like where we're going. Does HR even know? Either way, it's 2 down, infinity to go, and I think we're doing all right so far.
Jamf After Dark is a very strangely named podcast from Jamf and is copyright 2023, all rights reserved. Technical details and product offerings may change at any time, so always check jamf.com for the latest information on our products and services.
You can reach out to us if you have any questions, comments, or suggested show topics. Our socials are at Jamf Software for Twitter, if those of you are still on it, or simply send a friendly email to info@jamf.com with the subject line "Attention to the podcast." We're a sponsor of the Mac Admins Foundation, and a whole pile of Jamfs are available on the Mac Admin Slack. And of course, if you need support, reach out to support@jamf.com to get your immediate technical needs answered.
Special thanks to all of our guests this week and to our great audio engineer that makes us all sound like rock stars, Laura. And until next time, for Kat Garbus, I'm Sean Rabbit.
And for Sean Rabbit, I'm Kat Garbus, and we will catch you at the next After Dark podcast. Good night, and thank you, and hope you're enjoying bourbon or something nice.